Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. So far, I'm a really big fan of level 99 games. I really enjoyed BattleCon, although I don't get to play it as much as I would like to. Pixel Tactics has been an even bigger hit in my group simply because it gives me the head-to-head two-player, customizable, highly variable feel of BattleCon, but it is much faster. And I've liked a couple of their other smaller games as well. So, Cell Swords, I almost forgot that. That's a great two-player game, really love that. And so I was really excited for Argent the Consortium, which I backed on Kickstarter last year. I know this is only half the box, but the rest of it's pretty heavy and scattered all about my table right now. Argent the Consortium is a worker placement game, so significantly different from all the other level 99 games, although this takes place in the same world as BattleCon, War, and Devastation, and the soon-to-be released one, I can't think of the name of it right now, but it's called, is it Indines? I always say Indines, but I think it's supposed to be Indines. In either case, same world, and I'm not really sure what this world is supposed to be. I guess it's like a multiverse type thing, where there's like magic and technology and superheroes and I don't know, lots of different things going on. There's planar jumping, it's kind of like Planescape in a way. I don't know, but it's cool, okay? So I was excited for this game, that's why I backed it on Kickstarter. It's a worker placement game about a magical university. You and the other players are like faculty members. You're either deans or researchers at this school, and the chancellorship is about to open. You are vying to become the new chancellor of the school, but the only way that that's going to happen is if you get enough votes from the Consortium, the subtitle of the game. The Consortium is actually other faculty members that you work with, but they keep their identity secret. They don't reveal that they're members of the secret consortium to decide the next chancellor. Instead, they're going to be walking around silently judging you on everything that you do. So what you need to do is figure out who the consortium voters are and what they like and what they're looking for in a new chancellor. And then for the rest of the game, you have to use your students. Like any good teacher, you're going to manipulate and exploit your students to go around to all these different areas of the university and take actions in order to do the things that these voters like once you discover their identity, and hope that by the end of the game, you've done enough to earn their vote, because that's all that matters. And most votes at the end of the game is going to be the winner and the new chancellor of the school. There's obviously a lot more to it than that, and I'm going to try to rush through this overview because there's a ton of stuff in the other half of this box. And then we're going to come back. I'll let you know what I think. Okay, folks, I'm just going to give you a very brief overview of Argent the Consortium. Honestly, this is not even close to everything that comes with the game. This assumes a 5-player setup, but I only have one of the player boards out because it would just take up too much table space. It takes up my entire table when you play a 4 or 5-player game. So just keep that in mind. This is not everything that comes with the game. I went over the theme at length in my intro, so I'm not really going to go over that again, but the end goal is that you want to have as many votes from the consortium as possible. That is all that matters. This is the consortium board. This is where all the votes are tallied. In fact, we'll just go ahead and take a look at that right now. Now, there's going to be 2 open voters for the consortium, and the consortium members essentially tell you your victory conditions. In order to get the vote cards, you have to meet their specific requirements. Now, the 2 open vote cards tell you quite plainly what they do, and they're pretty straightforward. One of them is most supporters. Supporter cards being other students and faculty at the school who are not part of the consortium, and they're not one of the players, but they're looking to help you and support you. So you want to have the most supporter cards in order to get that vote at the end of the game. And this one is the most influence. Influence points being that other thing on that board going around there, the track, where you'll have your tokens and you're moving around. Now, influence points, not only are they good for getting that guy's vote, but influence points are a tiebreaker in almost all regards. So if there's ever 2 people who are contending for a vote and they both have the same, let's say, most mana, and you both have the same amount of mana, whoever has the most influence is going to get that vote. In fact, even if there's a tie, even if you're tied on the influence chart, it's the order in which your tokens are stacked. In other words, if you really want to break a tie, you want to be on top of someone else's influence point if you're tied for influence points. During the course of the game, you're going to have the opportunity to put your mark of your particular color out on cards. In fact, you start with 1 in play, so everyone will have a little bit of information at the beginning, and people can put marks on the same consortium voter so they'll know. But some other examples, this is actually an example of one of the voters who cares about different schools of magic. There's 5 different schools of magic in the base game. So this one says most planar studies. What you want to do is have the most supporter cards and the most spell cards researched that correspond to the purple school of magic, the planar studies school. And if you can do that, you're going to get his vote. And there's one for each of the different schools of magic for that. In fact, there's one of them right now. That one is for mysticism, which is the black or dark gray school of magic. This one is most gold, so that's pretty straightforward. Have the most gold. The game comes with they call it gold, which is kind of they've admitted it's kind of a typo or just poorly worded because they're using the plastic coins, but they're all collectively called gold, and then you've got 5s and 1s. Then you have another example, most treasures. So you want to have the most vault cards that count as treasures. I'll get back to that in a second. I'll just show you one more. Most intelligence. Intelligence in this game is book tokens, which are these things here, which are going to let you learn a spell. But also you have scrolls, which lets you make existing spells more powerful. All right, I guess the next best thing we should go to is your actual player sheet. Now, this is actually called your office. Let me focus in on that a bit. Your office is your player character sheet, and your character sheet, much like almost everything else in the game, is double-sided with an A side and a B side. It doesn't actually say A and B on this, but you have 2 different characters that you can choose from. Now, all of your starting resources are going to be the same, and all of this information is mostly the same, but you will have a different spell book to start with. Not a spell book, but just a spell. It's your starting player spell, and you can gain more during the course of the game. And each of them has a different special ability. So like this guy's side, the B side, and they say recommend starting with the A side, so that's mostly what I'm going to show you, but he can actually wound someone and gain an influence point, whereas this woman's special ability actually lets her heal one of the mages. So completely different special abilities, because if your mages get wounded, they go to the infirmary, and it's difficult to get them out. So that's a good spell to have. This is the first player marker. I'm going to get back to that in a second and how that gets determined. You'll start off with some gold. You'll start off with mana. These are little mana cubes. You need these to fuel your spells, and different special abilities of some of the mages. Now, let's go ahead and talk about those mages. Now, each player is going to be represented by a different school of magic, and you'll automatically start with 2 mages of your color, of your school of magic, and then you're actually going to draft from the pool 3 more mages so that everyone starts with 5, and you can't have more than 2 of the same color. Now, you'll have to put the miniatures into these little bases together with one of your loyalty badges, which is a little bit cumbersome, but it's the only way that you can tell during the errand phase when you're doing the worker placement which mage belongs to which person. And each mage has a different special ability. So the blue mage, and again, here, I'll actually show you these first. These are little cheat sheet cards that tell everyone what the powers of the mages are, and just like everything else, they're double-sided, which means that every mage has the potential to have 2 different special abilities. I'm just going to talk about the A-side powers. So the blue mages are actually immune to the spells and special abilities of opposing mages, or opposing opponents, and the other deans and faculty members you're competing against, not necessarily other mage powers, which, speaking of the devil, you have the red mages. The red mages are all about wounding, so when you put them out, you can actually spend a mana to wound another player's mage miniature and kick them out of their spot and send them to the infirmary. Then you have, well, let's do the easy ones. The yellow mages are neutral. They have no special ability whatsoever, but they still count for worker placement and for getting a special ability on the map, or the special ability of the spot that you place it. One of the mages or one of the deans that the players control is forced to start with 2 of the yellow mages, but they get a merit badge in response. We'll get back to that in a second. Actually, well, I'll get back to that. I missed something I forgot to explain. But the gray mages, whenever you cast a spell, if you have a gray mage, you can, as my friend likes to say, cheat it in. You can, as a free action, put it on the board into a spot. The purple mages are fast action to put out. So normally on your turn you get a normal action and a fast action, and it usually takes a normal action in order to put one of any mage out on the board. But the purple mages can be put down as fast action, which means you can put down 2 mages in the same turn. The green mages cannot be wounded by the red mages, or they just can't be wounded, period, by any kind of special ability. But they can still be banished. And I think that that's it for all of the different mages. So you'll have your office, you'll keep your mages there, you'll have all of your different starting stuff, and that's pretty much all we need to cover there for right this second. I want to go back to something I was just explaining, which is my feet. Now, yeah, I was back here on the board. The merit badges. When the influence track, as you go along, there's different merit badge symbols. When you get there, you get to take one of these merit badges, and these are very important for activating spots on all the different tiles. The most powerful abilities can only be activated if you have a merit badge, so something to keep in mind. All right, now I want to talk about the rounds and how this game actually has a variable round order. So how this works, you have these bell tower cards, or actually I should say you keep track of the rounds with these cards. Different expansions actually have the different round cards with different effects on gameplay, but for the base game, these are just normal, so you keep track of those. There's a 6th round, but that's only for an epic game, and I don't recommend that. I'll talk about that later in my final thoughts. But the bell tower offering cards, instead of taking your normal action, which would be to put a mage out or to use a spell, you can instead choose to take a bell tower offering card. And they all give you a special ability. Like this one gives you popularity, gives you an influence point on the track. This one lets you take the first player marker. That's the only way that passes, actually. This one lets you, if you take it early, which you should if you're going to take this one, all your spells cost 1 less mana for the rest of the round. So you're thinking to yourself, well, like, whoa, okay, that's cool. Why would I not take those? The thing is, this is how you determine the end of the round. That's why every round is a little bit variable. When the last bell tower offering card is taken, the round immediately ends. So if you have nothing to do on your turn anymore, you've used all your mages, you've used all your spells, you're like, okay, I'll take a bell tower offering card. But you could start taking them whenever you want. Like you want to take that spell one because it helps you early on. But if you take them too fast, the round is going to end, and that could really screw some people who still have a lot of actions to do. So there is some strategery, if I may coin a phrase, to be had there. Alright, now let's get to the meat of the game, which is the errands phase. And these are not all the tiles that are in the game. You're always going to start with the council chamber and the library and the infirmary. But each one of these tiles, even the starting tiles, are double-sided. I'm not going to go over every single side. I'm going to go through all the A sides because that's going to give you a general taste. Most of them have the same sort of theme as to what the actions do on each side. They're just handled in a different way. And these aren't all of them. I think there's a few other tiles, maybe 3 other tiles I'm not using that I don't have out here because this is a setup for a 5-player game. So I'm just going to go through each of these. Now, the training fields, now here's how this works. You put a mage during the errand phase, everyone goes in clockwise order from whoever is the first player, and whoever has the first player token for that round. You put a mage into one of these gray circular areas. Now, you can put a mage in any of these normal gray circles that you want. First, you're doing the worker placement part. Then, once the round is over with the bell tower offering cards, then you're going to resolve all the tiles from left to right, from up to down, from the top of the tile area downwards. And even if you if you want to use a merit badge slot, you have to have a merit badge and have it to expend. But even if you don't have a merit badge to expend, you can still put a mage there. And even if you've taken another spot, you just don't want the ability of that spot for whatever reason during the resolution phase, you don't have to take it. Instead, you can just gain an influence point. So that is a little bit of screwage that can be had in this game because you can take a merit badge slot, just even if you don't have a merit badge, just to keep someone else who does have a merit badge that wants it from getting it. So that's a little strategy to note right there. So you put a guy there, and then during the resolution phase, you'll be able to get that special abilities. Now, these other spots, these are called shadow spots. There are some special spells that are going to let you shadow a spot. So if the spot's already taken and you can't go there, you can send a mage into the shadow realm to sort of ghost that spot and still get the special ability, but they resolve in seconds, which does matter in some cases. This whole tile lets you get books and scrolls. Now, let's go ahead and talk about spells right now. Now, there's other tiles that will actually let you get research, which will let you initially get spells, but actually I guess I'll have to zoom out a bit. Spells are cool things. There's going to be 3 of these available at any time to purchase. Whenever you get one, a new one will come out for players to look at. The first thing you need to do when you get research, you have to gain research. Research is like a little vial symbol, and when you have research, you can either put a book onto a spell in the lineup and therefore learn it and put it in front of you, but you have to have a book available in order to do that, or an existing spell that you already have in front of you with the book, you can put a scroll on it to level it up. You can use any spell level that you have learned, including the first spot, and actually this is an expansion card. I shouldn't be showing you that one. Here, let me show you one that's actually like in this version of the game. Here we go. Sorry about that. So let's see. This top spell just says, as an action, you can gain 2 mana, and it doesn't cost you any mana to use. The next spot, though, if you level it up, says that you can, as an action, your main action, use for free. You can gain a mana and refresh a spell. Down here, this is actually the research symbol I was talking about. You can spend a mana and, as an action, refresh a spell and then gain another research. And there's a lot of different types of spells. There are spells that can do wounding. Here's an example of a spell that lets you ghost one of your mages into one of those shadow spots. This is one of the green spells. They're all from the different schools of magic. This lets you wound, and it also lets you wound an opponent's mage and place a mage of your own, and so on. It just gets more powerful. Chain lightning. So those are some examples of spells. You'll always have 3 to purchase from. So let's go back to the tiles and what they do, if I may. And the courtyard lets you get mana equal to your wisdom plus 2, or if the merit badge slot, or mana equal to your wisdom, or 3 mana. So it gets progressively worse as you go through those. The spots get weaker the further you go down. The chapel. The most powerful slot will let you get a book, a scroll, and a mark. The envelope symbol is a mark, which lets you look at one of the Consortium voters. Or you can get 2 influence and a mark, or 2 coins, 2 mana, and a mark. Or a choice of 2 coins and 2 mana. The Catacombs. The Catacombs is going to let you draw a secret supporter and gain a mark, or get 2 influence points, or get influence points depending on how far back you are. So you one for each player with more influence points than you. Now, secret supporters are that you're going to take one of the supporter cards and put it face down into your discard pile on your board. They still count for dominance at the end of the game, but you don't get their special ability. Let's just go ahead and show you a few of those supporter cards, because that is relevant for a lot of the other tiles that we're going to be looking at as well. So here's an example. You see this guy is keyed into the school of green, so he'll count for green dominance at the end if that voter is in play. He has an action, gain 2 research, use this research spell on only nature green spells. Now, supporters, when you use their action, they're gone. They go into your discard pile. They'll still count at the end, but you can't use their ability again. This one is, as an action, you can spend 2 gold in order to gain an influence point, and you can do that up to 4 times. So there's an example of a couple of supporters. You'll always have 5 to choose from, but those do not replenish until the end of the round, or whenever you refresh things. So then we go to the Archmage's Study. Now, the Archmage's Study, who has a purple mage on it for some reason, the Archmage is actually going to let you gain control of this Archmage, special mage, who counts as all different types of mages. So he's a very powerful worker, essentially, that you can gain for the round. That's sort of a temporary worker, but he's an incredibly powerful one that you may want to use the special abilities of. The other 2 spots on the Archmage board actually let you swap out mages. So this one says you can immediately swap this mage for another from the supply, or immediately gain an influence point and swap this mage for another from the supply, so it gets a little bit weaker. Adventuring. Adventure! You can gain a secret supporter and 3 gold. I'm not going to read all of these, but you get the general gist of it. The dormitories is another spot where you can swap out mages for different ones from the pile, assuming that they're still the ones that you want available to purchase. The student stores is going to let you get buys. Now, buys are always vault cards. Vault cards, I'll show you those now. Those are going to be like pieces of equipment that are either going to be consumable, which are used once, or they're going to be treasure, which you can use once per round. Like this is a treasure, which is a really good one. You just gain a mark for using it, but you have to use an action to do it. If you have a buy, you have to spend the gold in order to buy it. If it's a draft, you just get to take it for free. And then there's also a draw, which is always from the top of the deck, and you just gain it. Then we go down to the council chamber, which is going to be used in every game depending on which side you want to use. However, this is just going to let you draft one of the supporters from the lineup, or you can choose to gain a mark if you don't want one of the supporters, or if all the supporters are gone by that point. The astronomy tower, both sides of it are a bit weird, because how this works, you have a little mark here, and when you go to one of the spots in the astronomy tower, you spend gold, an increasing amount of gold depending on which spot you're forced to take, in order to move this astronomy marker wherever it ends up, and you must move it if you want to get something. You're going to get the bonus listed at the bottom, like research, or money, or books, or marks, and so on. The library, this is where you can get a bevy of different things. You can get vault cards, you can get books, you can get research, you can get buys, you can get scrolls depending on where you go. There's 2 merit badge slots there. And finally, the infirmary. This is where mages go to die. Well, not die, they get healed eventually, but you have to, they don't heal automatically. You have to use special abilities to get them back out of there. But when a mage is sent to the infirmary wounded by another player, at least you get a consolation prize. You either get 2 gold, a mana, or influence points. And actually, it is worth noting on the other side, it's even more interesting because there's actually spots where the wounded mages can go, depending on if they get there first, in addition to their other bonus. And you know what? I'm just going to have to call it there because there's a ton of stuff I can go to. There's legendary spells, and there's tons of supporter cards I can go through, and vault cards, and lots of stuff. But that's a general overview of what you're doing in Argent and the Consortium. You're putting mages out onto all these tiles, trying to get their special abilities in order to glean information on who all the Consortium voters are, what they want, and then once you feel you have enough information to try going for the votes, you try to acquire all those resources: money, gold, mana, books, scrolls, spells, try to get dominance in different schools of magic, all these different things that you can do in Argent. Now let's get to my final thoughts. Well, it's tough to talk about a level 99 game without first talking about the theme and the components, and those are incredibly strong with Argent. I love the theme. I already went into it at length during my intro, but the idea of vying for control of this magical university and using all these different mages and trying to find out these secret voters, it's a theme that I really got into. I guess that you could make the argument that when it gets down to the actual turn-by-turn gameplay, the theme can feel a little detached, especially as the game sort of drags on a bit, but I still love it overall. I still love the idea of it. I think about it a lot as I'm playing it afterwards and before, and it's really helped along a lot by the appearance of the game. This is a beautiful game. The artwork is out of this world. Out of this world. I love all the artwork in every level 99 game that I've played, even Pixel Tactics, which is just pixels. But this game seems to be the best out of all of them. It's gorgeous. It really is. There's a couple of games that people know that I love but hate the artwork for. And people are always like, the artwork's not that bad. What are you talking about? You should be happy there's artwork at all. But then I think about games like Argent and like BattleCon as well, and how good and how high quality the artwork is and how much effort the artists put into it. And I'm like, no excuse. There's no excuse for any other game coming out in this day and age to not look at least half as good as a game like Argent does. It's just gorgeous, and it really helps bring out that theme quite a bit. As far as the physical components, it all looks pretty good too. My edition of the game, I don't know if every edition of the game is going to have the, I had the Chancellor's edition, and actually, I didn't even show that. Hold on. The Chancellor's edition comes in this sleeve, the Kickstarter edition, which is kind of unnecessary, but also looks good, I guess. But there's also plastic coins that I showed in the overview. I'm not sure if those are going to come in the every retail edition or not, but even so, everything else, the normal stuff, looks really good. I like the fact that there's miniatures, definitely better than meeples or tokens, although they don't fit in the bases very well. I think this was kind of an issue they were having as the Kickstarter, the post-Kickstarter production thing went on. But they don't fit in the bases very well. You always have to make sure, we learned quickly, to pick them up from the base instead of trying to pick them up by the miniature, or else they would just pop out, which was kind of frustrating, but I get it. I think the only because you have to have something to put the token in to show who they belong to. I guess the only workaround would have been if they had like little like circular pads that you could put on the bases that I've seen some other games do, but that might have been a lot more expensive and maybe not have worked out as well. So it's a minor quibble about the components, but otherwise everything looks good. There is some typos in the rulebook and on the tiles. You'll have to go to BGG. There's also a lot of questions that aren't necessarily clear in the rulebook, but it's pretty well laid out for the most part. But I do recommend a trip to Board Game Geek to look at some of the frequently asked questions threads just to help out with some of the rough edges there. The gameplay. Now, I like worker placement games in general, but I do think that most worker placement games feel very dry, disconnected from the theme like I was trying to actually talking about before, and that they kind of feel samey after a while unless you're buying a lot of expansions. Like, I think that the Scoundrels of Skullport expansion saved Waterdeep for me, and it's the only reason that game is still in my collection, because otherwise it was just really dull and boring. With just the base game of Argent, you will get 20 plays out of this game easily without feeling like you have even really plumbed the depths of it. There's so much to this game. All of the different mages, all of their abilities, the different spell cards, the different vault cards. I've played this game several times now and have not seen all the vault cards, have not seen all of the voters, have not seen all of the Consortium members. There's so much just in the base game. All the different tiles are two-sided. Everything is two-sided. Your candidate, which means that your spell book is different. Like, this is kind of a hallmark thing of level 99 games, is having variety to the game. And I have heard some other reviewers complain that there's like too much in the game, but I think it's great. I really do. Because yes, it can be overwhelming at first to see all these different options. A side, B side, the mages have different powers, the spell books are different, all these different things, but you will be grateful for that when you play this game a lot. And I will tell you, you will play this game a lot because it's great. I really, really enjoyed this game. And I'm so glad that I'll get tons and tons of plays out of just this set. Now, part of it is I already talked about the variety, but it's just the fact of each player feeling different and having different powers. You have your spellbook, which is different. You have a different focus on mages, which is different. And they all have special powers except for the neutrals, but even the neutral player who starts off with the neutral mages is going to have the merit badge to make up for that. But then you have the fact of being able to draft more mages and have a diverse crew. It just makes every play experience different every time, and everyone at the table has a different method of playing, or at least a different direction to go into. And I will say that the big pivot point for the game, and what really makes it, if this wasn't in the game, it would just be good but not great, is the Consortium voters. And that is really where you're going to get your direction for the game. Figuring out what they need is going to put you on the right path. But of course, you need to figure out as many of them as possible, just as your opponents do. So as you're putting marks out, they're putting marks out. They're finding out the same information that you know, and they're going to be vying for it as well. And of course, your hope ultimately, since you can't do everything, is that as you're going down these certain paths, maybe you find out that one of the voters needs as much mana as possible, and you're trying to collect as much mana. At the same time, maybe you're collecting a lot of gold, or just by happenstance, or maybe you are getting a lot of influence points, not because you are hoping to get the most influence points, someone else is, and get that open voter, but then you find out, oh look, at the end of the game, there's someone who wanted the second most influence points. At some point, you have to let luck be involved a little bit, because it's very rare that you're going to be able to find out, maybe not rare, but it's difficult to find out what every single hidden voter is, and then to actually be able to work towards all of them is even more difficult, even in a full game. But you just have to hope that what you're doing gets as many votes as possible, if I explain that well. Sometimes it's just going to work out that way, but I really enjoy that aspect of it. You have direction, you know what you're supposed to do, and you just have to be the best at it while trying to diversify, and that's the balance of the game. How much do I focus on these 3 or 4 mark cards that I know for sure and that I've been working on this whole time, and try to lock those in, but at the cost of neglecting everything else? That whole balance within the game is fascinating to me, and I love it. The variable round order with the bell tower cards giving you another option to do. You can go and put your workers out and try to get all these different things and experiment and research, but you may just want to take a bell tower card because it's good and it's what you need right now, and maybe you don't care if the round ends a little bit early. Other rounds are going to be like, nobody take the bell tower cards. If you take that bell tower card, I'm going to kill you. That's how it works. It's like you've got 3 mages left, and someone's like, you know what? Just give me a bell tower card. I'm ending this. That can be very frustrating, but also really cool. Now, there's a lot of screwage in the game. There's the red, right off the bat, if you take red mages, you're going to be nuking the other players. There's spells that let you nuke the other players. Banishing. There's nothing worse than having a mage banished at the end of the round. And during the beginning of the round, whatever, fine. Send him back. I'll put him out again. Maybe I won't get the spot I want, but I'll get a spot. Banish him right at the end of the game before someone takes the last bell tower card, and you're screwed. So there's screwage in this game, and I thought that I would hate it more than I ended up hating it. But the thing is, everyone can do it. Going to the infirmary is not a bad thing. In fact, with with the B side of the infirmary card, we were trying to go there because it's not too difficult to get healing powers and spells that are going to let you, or even if you have the bell tower card out that lets you do that, it's not too tough to just kick your mage back into your supply, and you got a bonus for having done so. And then if you do it during the round, you can just put them out again. So a lot of cool back and forth going on there, and it sort of negates any of like really frustrating aspects of the player's screwage. And man, there's just so much going on in this game. The vault cards, the supporter cards, I like that you can have them for a special ability, but even if you use their special ability, they can still be used to count for dominance in one of the different schools of magic if there's voters that actually allow for that. And sometimes you just don't know if you haven't been paying attention to all the different cards that are out there. Influence being a tiebreaker is more important than you think because it can come into play a lot, and you really cannot neglect influence even if you don't care about getting the influence votes. And plus you want merit badges to use the best spots. There's just so much going on here. I could probably go on and on and on about it, but needless to say, it is all really awesome and I love it. So what's the problem with the game? Because no game is perfect. Well, here's the main issue with it. It's too long. I do have a habit of saying this about too many games probably. Maybe that's part of my group, but I will say I think it's a serious issue with this game. Because I've played it a few times now, and we were really only able to do a full game once. Now, you might discredit my review for that, but the fact is, the other games we got to round 3 or 4, and it had already dragged out for over 2.5, 3 hours in one case in our first game. And I don't think that was all just learning it or AP either. I think that this game can drag a bit, especially with one of the coolest parts of the game is the whole bell tower aspect, but sometimes I can drag things out a lot, especially when it gets to later rounds. It's a problem that continues to escalate as you get special power cards in front of you. And that, combined with the vast amount of stuff that you have to do, is going to be a huge turnoff to people who are just casual gamers. Even people that have been gaming for a while now, but don't like uber complex games, this might scare them off. And it's sad because the actual gameplay is rather simple. You're just putting workers out and activating spots and taking the stuff and trying to get these voters, but there's so many options that it can bog the game down and just protract the length and make it seem much more complex and heavier than it actually is. But this is definitely a heavyweight game, but it's not that bad, but the game length makes you think that it is. So that's a really unfortunate part of it. But it's tough for me to say that that's like a huge downside because I don't mind a long game. It's just that I know that it's going to be excluding a lot of people that I would normally play with for it, as opposed to games like Lords of Waterdeep, worker placement games that can be done really quick, like in an hour. But I will say that the time that I spent with Argent, long though it may have been, was really, really enjoyable. There's tons of stuff. The setup is a bear. That's part of the time length as well, and it takes up all of your table, but hey, that's not always bad. Sometimes I like having a big, grandiose, epic game out. And I will say, if you want to cut down on the time, don't bother with some of the more complicated sides of the tiles. You can probably even do the A side for your first few games. I purposely wanted to try the B sides in a couple of our games, but you could do without it. I mean, sometimes you don't really need that variety until you get to like 5, 6, 7, 8 games. And also limit player count. The game out of the box can go up to 5. Don't do that. You want to do a 2 or a 3 player game to start off with. Don't learn from my mistake. The last game of this that I did was 2 players, and it just sung. I mean, it was really, really quick, felt really, really tight, and it got the whole point of the game across without having to be taken out at extreme length. But when you get up to 5 players, that's when it starts to be a problem. But other than that, even though that sounds major, it's really not. This is a great game. This is a great, solid game. I'm excited to see what else they do with it. It's like infinitely expandable. More tiles, more cards, more mages, more things. In fact, there's an expansion, which I'm going to review separately. It's all great and solid if you have the right group for it. And hopefully you do, because you shouldn't miss out on this. It's Argent the Consortium from Level 99 Games. Another hit for them. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.